Quinshon Judkins, domestic violence, was arrested on it in Florida over the weekend. Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio on if the Quinshon Judkins incident points to bad luck or bad research by the Browns.
I think it's a combination of both. Look, there's no way to know for sure who's going to be a problem, who's not going to be a problem. There wasn't any reason that I had heard of, and I'm very skeptical about the stuff that makes the rounds pre-draft because there's a 4D chess match that goes on with trying to maybe get a guy to slide if you really like him, or get another team to take a guy if you really don't like him, so the guys you want can slip down the board. But I hadn't heard anything that I recall about Quinshon Judkins. Stuff just happens. And it's bad luck, it's good luck, it's whatever luck. It's just stuff happens, and then you have to move forward. And it's so early in the process of understanding what did or didn't occur between Quinshon Judkins and the alleged victim in the incident that resulted in him being arrested for misdemeanor domestic battery. We don't know how it's going to play out. It is something, though, that is now on the list of many things that Browns fans have to worry about. And that's all that fans of any team are trying to minimize, the number of things they have to worry about.
Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. And Jeff, the fans are one thing. It's the organization. This seems to be a regular occurrence. It's one thing to give guys second chances. I get that. And I don't want to – we're going to let the facts come out. But every year it's something.
It's obviously not an ideal situation, of course. And, of course, the second straight year the Cleveland Browns have spent a second-round selection on a player out of Ohio State. And, although there are some differences with each circumstance, the circumstances kind of are, similar. And, again, one thing to note, obviously, every state, just because a charge is a charge, doesn't necessarily mean – if the crime is committed in Ohio as opposed to Florida, that, the consequences of said charge are going to be the same in every municipality within every state within the United States of America. But look, it's just not an ideal situation. This team is trying to do everything they can to come back from what was a terrible, terrible 2024 season. And, one of the ways that you try to, ramp up some positivity, ramp up some excitement for your fan base as you were less than a week away from training camp beginning is, the new players, the draft picks. And the Browns certainly had a full draft class this year as opposed to years in the past. And, here we are again talking about something else besides actual football. Again, and it is difficult to discuss these things because when you were in the infancy state of all of this, you want to be able to show, the correct decorum to the victim. You have to also speak with the understanding that, the defendant, as in, Quinshon Judkins here to this point, he is charged, but he is presumed innocent until he's proven guilty. And, I think we got a lot of people that maybe get a little bit further down the road in speaking about these things, which probably isn't the best way to go. Because, you are talking about, a potential victim and a potential defendant here. And, none of us have any idea where this is potentially going to go. You do not want to hear about, obviously any cases of, people getting physical with the opposite sex. It's not the greatest moment here. And what was, starting to hopefully maybe pique everybody's interest and excitement for the Cleveland Browns in 2025. Here we are again, getting away from actual football and unfortunately talking about something that, just seems to be, the proverbial right now for the Browns black eye. Just, it seems to be basically swelling out as opposed to maybe going away.
Yeah. And it's take a look at this since 2000, these are the number of arrests for franchises. And it seems like the Browns we've talked about a couple every year. Vikings have the most, Broncos with 57 since 2000, Broncos 56, Bengals 51, Jaguars and Chiefs 41, and the Browns 40. So it's not, I guess the point is, it's a league-wide problem that they got to deal with. And that's one of the reasons that they come down hard and they end up suspending people when you might be found innocent, you're still going to be suspended because the league sees it as a problem they have.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, you cater your audience obviously to men, women, children, and there's a certain message the league sends out, and as far as the way they want the shield to be protected, the shield to be viewed, this certainly hurts the overall product in that capacity. It's just not something that works well in yes, in a perfect world, everybody would be, a law-abiding citizen within the league, but unfortunately, we have, these issues, and every final mini camp closes the same way in June. The head coach gets up to the middle, tells everybody, hey, you got 3 weeks, you got a month, go enjoy yourselves, have some fun with your friends, have some fun with your family, be smart, be safe, be careful. And it's kind of, saying, please, do not get yourself in a situation. And unfortunately, here are the Browns, with everybody trying to get excited again, for the rookies to report on Friday, the veterans report after next weekend. And, some of, obviously the air is out of the balloon in regards to that. And, we're going to sit here again like we did, if 3 years ago with a quarterback and a couple of years ago with a defensive tackle. And, last year, obviously, with Mike Hall, where, we're all sitting here trying to play court TV where, essentially most of our jobs are, obviously, taking and viewing sports and giving our opinions on it. And, look, it's just not where anybody wants to be right now. It certainly does not help that Quinshon Judkins does not have a contract at this point. Most of, the NFL second round draft choices, once you guarantee 2 players contracts, obviously almost all of them want the guaranteed contract. Don't think that's going to probably be an option for Quinshon Judkins, how this works out either way. Does he show up on Friday and the Browns basically say, okay, you've reported to training camp, why don't you go back home and just, stay there till, we're further down the road where we can say, yes, you're not a part of things right now, or yes, it's okay for you to come back. My guess is they will have him report and then just quietly excuse him to go home. But again, we're talking about things other than football right now, which is, not what we want to be doing. And also trying to show, the right amount of, respect to obviously the legal process here.